Hi, I'm Friar Paul Schloemer, and I'm the Vocation Director for the Province of Our Lady of Consolation of the Conventual Franciscans, and with me is...
Father Elias Henritzy. I'm the Associate Pastor at St. Louis Bertrand in Louisville, Kentucky. I'm a Dominican, have been since 1986, and been ordained for about 22 years now.
Good. And we just want to have a conversation a little bit about what's called the mendicant tradition, which is a particular charism of religious communities in the church. And the Dominicans and the Franciscans are really the first two of the original five, which includes the Servites, Servants of Mary, the Augustinians, and the Carmelites. But we want to talk a little bit about our communities, our traditions. And I guess one of the first things it's always been interesting to me when Francis came along and 1209, I guess, writes the first draft of his first rule, the earlier rule we call it. And then the Dominicans started at 1215?
1216, I think, is when it was approved. Yes.
Okay, but you don't. But we have. You don't have a rule. Can you talk about why that is, or what the difference is, or how that works?
Well, our orders started around a time in the church when there were a lot of orders happening, and there became a decree, I think it was in 1215 or so, that there could be no new orders.
Okay.
And so what we did was take an older order's rule, the rule of St. Augustine, to be our basic rule. Okay. So canonically we weren't a different order, but we were a different entity.
Okay.
So we began using the tradition of the church about religious life from St. Augustine, and then we added to that our constitutions, where we, like you, elect our leaders and so forth.
Correct.
St. Dominic, as I mentioned, was a canon, and in the medieval ages, and now there are certain men that are assigned to a cathedral to pray for the entire diocese and to hold the office, a liturgy of the hours there. Well, anyhow, he was entrusted to do some tasks, and as he began to encounter people in southern France who were Albigensians, that's the word for it, but they were anti-matter people, it occurred to him that these challenges of these sects, these heretical sects, needed a response from the church that was based in education.
Now, by anti-matter, you mean that in a different sense than Doctor Who?
I don't know Doctor Who, but they were against material things. So they were against food. They were against marriage. I mean, that's a sacrament, and food's a blessing from God. All of most of creation is material in a certain way. But anyhow, he thought that the church needed something that was more mobile and more educated to meet the challenges of educating the Catholic laity, meeting them in the cities, and refuting heresies. Okay. So this was a dynamic, mostly born of his experience of the church's need at the time. Okay.
Yeah, which I think is very different. Francis, at least I've always understood it, was really very much a personal thing. That Francis in his conversion story was just a guy who trying to find his own way, and who thought he knew what he wanted, thought he wanted the world, thought he wanted all those great things, and then had this wonderful conversion moment, where the San Damiano Cross talks to him, and he hears this homily on the apostolic movement, and that to take nothing of your own, and is so moved by that he says, "This is what I want," and then just starts to do it, tries to copy Christ as much as he can, and somehow starts attracting followers, and then has to figure out, okay, all these people are walking around with me, what do I do with that? And that's where I think he turns to the church, because I know that with the Albigensian, the Waldensians, there's a couple other movements in that time of these extreme poverty movements that were very popular, and people liked them because of the witness, but then would turn, like you said, this anti-materialism thing. And I think the reasons the Franciscans survived was Francis really made that turn to the church. Okay, now I've got something going on, but I'm a loyal son of the church, so I need to ask permission of the Pope to see if this is okay. And I think, and that's a huge, that relationship, I think, with church And that is I think, what makes an order and makes us distinctive.
I think it's Francis's very charism of who he is draws people to him, and of course that's been difficult to enflesh over the years, hasn't it?
Yes.
A challenge in many ways.
Yes.